Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at tightening up our pencil drawings, and I'll show you some techniques that will help you when you're working with a composition that has multiple layers. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out where we want to start. I've got my reference image on the left. I've got my rough pencils, super rough pencils here on the right. And I've got each object of my pencils on a separate layer. Let's say I want to isolate everything and just look at the main character because I want to start working with her. Well, what I can do is I can select that layer, right click, and I can choose Show Hide All Other Layers. This immediately toggles everything off. I can bring back my ref layer. I can also bring back my background layer so I can easily see what I'm working with. So now what I'll do is I'll just drop the opacity. I can hit the V key. That's the keyboard shortcut to get back to the selection tool. And I can type in a number like 3, and that makes it 30% for opacity. And I can make a new layer, Shift, Option, Command, N. That makes a brand new layer. And what I'll do is I'm going to still work with my red color, but now I'm going to start adding some detailed elements. I'm not trying to make an exact copy of the photo reference here. I'm just using this as a guideline and fleshing things out. So I'll go ahead and start at the top here, the hair, and I'm thinking about shape. And her hair actually drapes over her form. When you're drawing hair, think of the hair as having, think of it as a volumetric shape. It has some form. After all, hair is basically like tapered cylinders, super thin tapered cylinders. So here I'm going a little bit more slow. You're seeing this done in real time. And we've got our arm. Now, sometimes when you're working with photo references, your photo references may not be exaggerated enough, and you can always go back in and change things. You're not, forced to use a pose that looks stiff. You can always go back in and alter it. That's what makes it, I think more interesting. So I'm going to draw her individual fingers. And this is a little bit difficult to see on the reference because the quality of the reference isn't so hot. Looks like there's a knife. And I can change that if I want. I can change it to another weapon, whatever I feel like doing there. There's her top. And she's got her hair. Again, I'm just indicating where that is. Now, if you'll notice here when I'm looking at her fingers, I've kind of grouped them together. That's just a quick way for me to look at fingers in terms of sets. Then I can come back in. And this finger actually looks like it's kind of been in that, and that's where references really are helpful. It looks like she's got some type of collar on her, around her arm, or maybe I'm just seeing that and extrapolating. I don't see a collar there. Maybe I'll just add that in because I think it looks cool. Let's extend this out. And again, these are still loose drawings, but they have a little bit more structure to them. And this is where, I'm starting to think about detail. This is normal. This is part of the process. Anyone who tells you that, you can just jump right in. I know that Kim Jong-ji, phenomenal artist, could do that, but for the rest of us mere mortals, it's, it is a process. Okay, looks like she's got some kind of a band. I am going to mimic this particular pose and the costume for this particular example, but I'm not going to always follow that protocol. This is just to kind of like, for those folks that are curious about, how do you adhere to the reference, for example, this is one way of doing that. And then for eyes, I'll just go ahead and put placeholders. I'll indicate where the nose is and where the lips are. And it looks like she has some kind of hair elements on there. I'm not sure what those are. I'm not too familiar. This is supposed to be a person in some kind of cosplay. If you know who this character is, or who this actress is supposed to be portraying, you can let me know in the comments below. Because I don't. And see, this allows me to, by drawing her legs and drawing through the form, I know that this foot is going to connect with her thighs. There's no doubt about that. But if you just draw the dress and you don't think about the underdrawing, and then that can kind of create some weird looking feet sticking out where they probably shouldn't stick. Okay, so now we're drawing the boots, and you'll see all these little shiny curves here. These are just basically where the boots kind of bunch up. It's not purely tight or straight. So you'll always see this kind of represented as, curved segments like this, or they might look like Z's, backward Z's like this right here, and this right here. So that's what I'm looking out for. You'll see folds. I've changed the orientation of the foot just because I think that this might look more interesting for what I'm doing, and that's totally fine. And now I can hide my underdrawing. Oh, but I forgot there's like a cape. So she's got something like that. I guess it goes kind of behind her like this. Now I can hide the underdrawing. And I've got a pretty good sense of how things are working. And see what I mean? This is like, this thumb is not connecting with this. So that needs to be fixed. And we all make these mistakes. It's just, being able to catch them and to fix them. So let's fix this finger. Drawing through your forms will definitely help you out. So that is it's a little bit more structured than what we initially started out with. Let me just go ahead and put these two side by side so you can see exactly how we're going from something that's super rough to something that has a little bit more form and some more detail. And looking at this too, I forgot that I need to maybe add a little bit more to her chest. And part of this is clipped off here. I'm not super worried about that. Now, once you have this drawing, now, I'm not saying that you have to go ahead and copy everything to the letter. Here's how I could maybe add my own spin to this. And I'm not going to have time to do the entire montage here, but just as one example. So we've got our super rough. This is to get the proportions and the pose, and to make sure that everything reads properly. Once I've done that, now I'm starting to tighten up the drawing a little bit. I'm adding some more details and some other elements, fixing things like fingers and what have you. So now what I'll do is I want to make another layer on top of this, and I'll go in with a more tighter pass. So I'll pick kind of a bluish color, and I always turn these colors into black at the very end, so it's not really a problem here. So I want to now think about, okay, this is going to be a piece of clothing. It might have a little bit of overlap. That might be her collar. I'll add a little bit of overlap there. Let's see her face. So I can go kind of stylized if I want to. Let's see. I'll zoom in so you guys can see it. So most people don't realize that there's multiple passes that an artist has to go through to get it looking just right. Let's go ahead and draw her shoulder. I'm going to make an executive decision here. I don't want the hair to flow over her chest like this. I'm going to instead move the hair behind. And that's what I mean by not just, parroting out the reference and copying it verbatim. It's about making those decisions that you feel are going to make the illustration effective or strong. If you draw with your arms as opposed to your wrists, you get these nice sweeping lines. I'll talk about that in some of my other videos. If you're looking for something that's more basic, I have a second channel called Krishna Draws 2 that goes into, the basics of digital drawing. Have a look at that if you haven't already. And you know what? I'm going to make her neck a little bit thinner. I want to exaggerate that. I also want to make these arms thinner too. To get that pressure sensitivity, I have my brush set up in such a way that I can get this nice thin to thick line. For clothing or other elements that surround somebody's skin, give a little bit of an extra overlap. There's the other thigh. Let's look at the reference again and see how this cloth comes down like this. So we won't necessarily even see this part. It's obscured. I'm going to, even though we don't see your shoulder, I'm just going to put a little bit of an indication of where that shoulder is, just for my own benefit. All right, so now you can see the three variations of this. Here's the original rough pencils, and then here I'm adding some of the details, and then lastly, I'm kind of tightening up the drawing even more. Now, how many passes is good enough? That really depends upon how much information you're trying to convey. So I'm just hiding the original reference for a moment here just so you can see these things side by side. But I have something that I can now begin to work with. It's not perfect or anything, but at least now I'm starting to see things come together. And I'll do that for the remainder of the other objects that are in my scene, and I'll then combine them to create that montage effect. So, you know, it's a process. It's not a one and done. You know, these things usually take a little bit longer to do, and you always want to look at your reference while you're working to make sure that your proportions and your anatomy and everything else look good. Don't be discouraged by this. It just takes some time, but the end result is pretty cool. So if you like this video, please give it a like. Helps the feeds the algorithm. That's what the kids say. I guess maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. Thanks for watching. And if you have any questions about anything that I'm doing here, please ask, and I will do my best to help you out. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.